And Joseph Odell, because I got involved in the case, and I'm accompanying him and a woman, Laurie, who was doing her best. She had volunteered for an innocence project, gets involved with this case of this man, Joseph Odell. Wow, look what happened here. Gets an investigator, goes and does all the things that he was not able to do for himself. And the Italian Parliament hears about the case. Joseph Odell, this woman, lawyer, is trying to do something. They send over representatives of the Italian Parliament. They send over the mayor of Palermo who had taken on the mafia, and he comes, visits Joseph, makes him an honorary citizen of Palermo, and says, Joseph, if they kill you, we will not let you be buried in Virginia soil. We will ship your body over, and we will have you buried in Palermo. And that's what happened, folks, at the end of it. And in that cross-section, in that web of providence and life, I get to have a dialogue with Pope John Paul. And Lawyers was being brought over to Italy by the Italian Parliament, and she's going, Sister Helen, I'm going to go and I'm going to visit these towns in Italy and all, and I'm going to go and they're going to arrange for a meeting with the Pope. Like, wouldn't you love to meet the Pope and talk to the Pope about death penalty? Because aren't nuns and popes, tight? Dialogue was happening all over the place in the Catholic Church about the death penalty because the church is always part of the world community. And dialogue, it was bubbling up about human rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the Catholic community as well as in all the communities. So dialogue was going on. I was one part of the dialogue. But what I got to do was to put into Pope John Paul's lap the stories, because he's a pastoral man. And I was able to raise directly the question, Your Holiness, the Catholic Church in the Catechism clearly upholds the dignity of innocent life. What about guilty life? And when I'm walking with a man to execution and he's shackled hand and foot, he's been rendered completely defenseless. And he says to me, Sister, please pray that God holds up my legs. Because the dignity, he wants to maintain his dignity. He doesn't want to faint. He doesn't want his knees to buckle under him. Mr. Bloom last Tuesday was trying so hard to maintain his dignity and his composure as they're trying to find the veins. And I said to the Holy Father, I said, Your Holiness, there is no dignity in someone who's put to death, who's been rendered defenseless. It's not self-defense for society. And the Pope himself, in his own encyclical, The Gospel of Life, had pointed that out. Modern societies, we have a way to defend ourselves. We don't need to kill people. And if you have a bloodless means, as he said, to defend, you don't have to kill. And so in my books, and to you today, I tell the stories. What I do when I get on the road is I tell the stories to bring people close. Do we have to keep killing people? Is that the only way we can keep ourselves safe? How do we get into this? What is it doing for us? And I tell the story of the guards. I tell the story of Felton Cootie in the death chamber in Louisiana State Penitentiary. As long as he was supervisor on death row and gave out the meals and took care of things and kept order on the row, he did fine in his job. But then he was appointed over to the TAC team, the tactical team, the execution squad. And his job wasn't even to strap him down. His job wasn't even to do the practice that the guards have to do when they go to kill somebody. Practice when he walks peacefully. Practice when he fights them every inch of the way Lewis Williams here in Ohio. Did you know about what happened with Lewis Williams Jr., who when the guards came for him, he had been quiet in his cell, he'd been reading his Bible, and he put his hands around those bars, and he begins to yell and scream, "Don't kill me! Don't kill me!" The guards have been taught, look, you're just doing your job. The juries have looked at this, but you're just doing your job. And Lewis Williams have to pry his hands loose, fighting and screaming. They bring him down to kill him here in Ohio, throw him on to the lethal injection gurney. The guards throwing their body over here so they can strap him down. And one guard was patting his shoulder to say, it's going to be all right. And what happened to Felton Cootie is his job was just to take a paper sack, go to the person's cell after they've been killed, and collect the toothbrush and clothes and stuff to give the family. You may be asking yourself at this point, yeah, that's terrible. What about the victims? You're going to talk about the victims? Look what they suffered. Look like Patrick Sonia, the first man I ever met on death row, he and his brother. The killing of 2 innocent teenage kids who had gone to a Catholic high homecoming football game on a November night and were never seen alive again. And the fathers called by the deputies to come to the morgue the next day to identify their children. A young man, David LeBlanc, a young girl, Loretta Bork, found near a sugarcane field in Louisiana with bullet holes in the backs of their heads. Every parent's worst nightmare. We're going to talk about the victims? What about the victims? What do you do with something like that? What's justice mean for victims? And I want to invite you to think about this. What happened Tuesday to the victims' families who waited over 20 years for this justice to happen for them? Who waited 20 years to be given their moment where they get to sit on the front row and watch as Ohio now is going to kill Mr. Boom for the killing of their loved one. What happened to them in the process? And do we really think that the way we heal the human wound of having lost a person to violence is to have somebody wait in a very public way, the wound open to the public, open to the media, every time there's a change in status in the trial? Do we really believe that they get to sit on the front and watch as the state kills and that that's going to heal a human being? When Timothy McVeigh was executed in Oklahoma 5 years after the killing of 168 people, adults and children, it couldn't be worse than this. Half of the victims' families had figured out that watching Timothy McVeigh die over closed-circuit TV, that when they came home afterwards, they still had to face the empty chair. And if you ever go and see the memorial to victims' families, it's sculptures of 168 empty chairs. And that's what happens with violence. So we imitate it, and we say, you get to watch, and that's going to give you closure? What happens to people waiting 20 years for this moment of justice? I've met victims' families. I did one small thing. We started a group because I realized when I began to go to parents of murdered children meetings how alone victims' families are. People stay away from it. It's like why you stay away from a forest fire. Their pain is so great. They say even our friends avoid us. They don't know what to say, or they say, you know, I'm not trained in grief counseling, or we stay away because their pain is great. And I realized, oh my God, they're alone too. They're two pariahs. The pariah of the victim's family who have suffered this terrible pain, and then on the other end, the person that we have said, that monster deserves to die, and they're on death row. One small act to start a victim support group, and I realized all victims' families, what they need is they need counseling, they need friends by their side, they need people in their churches holding their hands and praying with them when they fall apart. The parents, 70% of whom lose a child or go through divorce, people lose their jobs, they can't focus. Where's the community around them to support them? And we hold out for 1% of all the murder victims, 1% to say, here's how your healing's going to happen. Here's how we're going to get justice for you. And to hear it being said at trial, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there is only one punishment that can really do justice for a victim's family. They killed, they die. And that's how we honor the victim's family. When New Jersey did away with the death penalty 2 years ago, and New Mexico last year, New Jersey had 62 murder victims' families who testified before the legislature to say, don't kill for us.